Hello and welcome into the Sorare Data Show. I am Andrew Laird. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare, joined today by the man who everyone has been waiting to hear from after his Medium post on, was that Friday? Telling us how we should feel. Peter Stojanov, also known as Yowzaa on Sorare. Peter, how does it feel that everybody's like, I'm not going to read any of this. I'm just going to wait for Peter to tell me if it's good or not.
Yeah, it was funny. I was catching the show that you did with Andy and Quinny. And then I was like, oh, I guess I just have homework to do now. Thanks, Andy. Thanks a ton. I was like already planning to do it, but like that was just like, oh, okay, now like it's been said like publicly. Okay, I've got to get this done.
Just for the future, does it help if we gave you a deadline? Are you somebody who like needs a deadline to finish something?
I like it's a little bit of like I want to get things out because there's sort of this I want to get things out as fast as I can. It's always can I be the first is always a great thing, but I also want to get it right at the same time.
Sure.
And like it's that balance. So I'd rather try to get it right, try to get the numbers right than rush something out.
So, and Pete or Daniel says here, why read when you can listen? How do you feel about making sure you get the numbers right, and then the numbers keep? Never mind. Don't even answer. Thank you everybody for coming in. Bob Franklin back on the podium. Martin, hyped to see which teams are an in-season contender on Wednesday. I feel like we would know them, but who knows? And Misaki on the podium. So thank you everyone for coming in. Stefan, Surface, what's up? Anyan, I won a signed jersey from a rivals league. Hopefully it's a Liverpool one. There you go. Toby said, good evening. Love ROI calculations. Sadly, I'm too lazy to do them myself, so we'll happily just soak up information from Peter. I mean, it's like this is what the whole community is doing here. Philly Dilly, what's up? Thank you for coming in, looking for food. David back for another live one. Peter, are you from Serbia?
Oh, family's from Croatia. Close, though.
Close enough. Glenn, what's up? Mike Baston, that's right. Normal service here now that Bob's on the podium. Johannatan, hello. Toby, poor Peter was looking forward to a chill summer weekend. Instead, he gets late notice homework. Malky, thanks for coming in. Robbie, I want 40% ROI in season and afterwards get more in classic. And Vita says being first is more important than being right. Everybody knows that. Sorry, Peter. Henry Scosmo. Johannatan said, do we know if the early access cards will be exclusively on auctions? We do not. In fact, I think we do know that they won't be. Actually, I don't think we know. I don't think we know any of that. I'm hoping somebody knows it and that they work for Sorare. But we'll see. NFTM, Bio Trey from Nigeria. Now we're talking. Alex, having no expectations is the best. We're not here for expectations. We're here for facts. Agent Cooper, Peter's becoming a regular at this point. I'm still convinced he's a former Serbian chess champion, Croatian. He's got the brains. Laird has the hosting skills. That's all right. Is Peter the mama bird feeding all of us baby birds? Yeah, it's as simple as that. So Peter wrote a Medium post 2 days ago, according to Medium, that says, what's this mean to us? Went through a ton of stuff. Actually, Peter, has Gator Guy talked to you recently?
Yeah, he DM'd me. But why don't you tell everyone?
So Gator Guy is a ChatGPT stan and decided to ask ChatGPT if Peter's latest Medium post was good. And it said it was great. And if AI said it's great, then I think we're all going to be okay. So anyway, this is
I think one thing I'd like to point out, though, is
sure.
It gave me like a 6 out of 10 for conciseness. This was only 6 minutes of a read. I feel like that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. I'm going to guess it took most people much longer to, like, they probably read it in 6 minutes and needed like 66 minutes to like understand what they read. But that's, I mean, no judgment to anybody. It took me just as long. Peter, what was like your initial response or reaction, I guess, to the announcement?
So there's like, from the like non-numbers standpoint, it's really difficult to, I understand that they're trying to get these big numbers out and be like 15, we're giving out 15 million in prizes. Look at what all of these prize pools look like. I wish it was in a more digestible way to look at it. I just feel like the way, like having the pictures is really difficult to sort of understand what we're looking at, what we're kind of seeing from the past going to the future, because I think we all just want bigger and better. And I mean, I think it's a difficult line, or line for Sorare to kind of balance. It's if it's not that much better of a prize pool from last year, people are going to be disappointed, or if it's worse. And so it's like, you don't really want to share all of that information. But I just wish, like, when I read it, I understood. I don't remember what things were like for Champion last year. Like, I don't know how this compares. And I think that's all kind of what we compare, what we need to like be able to compare things. Like we have a baseline understanding from last year because we played last year, or most of us played last year. So we'll know how to feel based on our experience from last year. And I think that's sometimes hard to gauge from these blog posts that have another post within it with another post within it. But from the numbers side of things, I feel like there's two sides of the story. There's the limited and rare side, which I think people should be excited for. I think the prize pools look interesting. They're compelling. And they really give like users a good opportunity, if they're good at the game, scout, prepare in advance, or get lucky, that they'll have a good sort of return on spend, I would say, instead of investment. And then there's the super rare and unique side, where I kind of feel a little bit of pain for them, because I just don't think those prize pools warrant someone to spend a lot of money in those divisions. And I think that's a bad thing from like a Sorare economy, health, long-term spend, because that's where a lot of the big spending users are.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back up to how they announced the numbers, because the one thing that I kind of picked up early on when I started at Sorare Data is like the delivery of information is tricky, because some people really like numbers, some people like pictures, some people like words. And so you need to do something that kind of satisfies them all. And the difficulty is when a table is probably the best method, and it's also probably the least consumable one by most people. Like people see a spreadsheet and they're just like, numbers, damn it. But the tricky part with the way that they did it is not only does it make it difficult to compare to last season, because they didn't include any data from last season, but the other one was the reason we wanted to analyze the numbers and why the prize pools are important is less about the actual payouts. Like obviously, if we compare them to last season, it's just like, okay, they're up or they're down, whatever it is. But really what we want to do is to see what we thought we were going to focus on and find out if it's comparably good or bad to the others. And having to like constantly scroll, like, should I be playing Contender or Bundesliga? And you're going like back and forth between all these graphics, having to write it down. And there's just like, there wasn't like a central, like, here's how it all looks. And your dashboard does a really nice job of at least comparing a couple of them together. But I think that's kind of like my response to how they actually delivered it, is just like the numbers themselves, like each individual graphic, you're just like, okay. And like, you don't actually get anything from like a single graphic.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great point. I think what makes it really hard now is also the divisions, and they have to show 6 competitions with 5 divisions in like different scarcity. Like it's a lot of numbers and a lot of data. I wish that they would just like embed like some sort of dashboard in these articles. Like you can do it. I know like there are plenty of websites. The company I work for, they do it. Like it's totally possible to do it. And I think that's a great way for people to quickly look and see how, like, what should I do? How am I impacted? Like, what can I do going forward? And it gets people excited to spend money and like, play the next season. It's fair if you don't want to compare it to last season, but you could provide a comparison with kind of what you're doing for next season between the scarcities and the divisions and the different regions, and people can kind of make their judgment call. Oh, Prem looks really good and Bundesliga looks really fun, so I'm going to go there. Instead, I think everybody just kind of feels a little confused and maybe just, I'm going to hold off. There's a couple of international windows right at the start of the season. I'm going to wait for those international windows, get a sense of things, and then jump in.
I thought the talk about super rares and uniques was really interesting, particularly because you don't play super rare and unique. And it does feel like people who don't play them kind of hate hearing about them, and which I get, but it's also kind of an important part of it. Rasso Misaki, said super rare and unique feels very much like a closed shop now. If you're in, you're set. If you're not, you need to shell out a ridiculous amount of money to play, certainly on the unique level. It's fairly cheap to compete in super rare now, not to compete, but yeah. So like, what was it specifically about the super rare division that you saw that you were like, man, I'm not doing that?
I think the first thing I'll say is like, it's always a little difficult to talk about super rare and unique from my standpoint because I don't play them. So, it just like, I hope I get the temperature of the room right. And I'm trying to listen to people who do play those scarcities to kind of understand what the issues are. And it feels like issues generally are liquidity. It's hard to sell a card when you want to sell a card because there's not many buyers. And sometimes it's hard to buy a card because there might not be many sellers. Like, it's just a really tricky marketplace. So it creates this sort of need to plan long-term. And that's really hard to do in So Rare. It's really hard to do, not just because the gameplay changes and all of that stuff, but because injuries happen, people have different roles. Some teams get hot. Like, it's just hard to know what you're going to need 2 or 3 months out when an auction might appear on the market. Like, there's just not that many cards to go around. So I think there's a lot of challenge there already. And if you want to have a complete gallery to, cover all your bases and be ready for game weeks, you need to spend a lot of money. And I don't think there's that many users who are just going to spend a lot of money every year.
I think it's actually really helpful to see really any super rare, and I don't play unique, and I actually would argue that unique, like if super rare and unique are kind of sectioned off from everything else, unique would even be separated from super rare. Like, it's a very different situation. But it is nice to see an analysis from somebody who doesn't play it, because you have no inherent bias in it. Whether you don't need super rare to be great, because you don't have super rares that you're like, these need to be good. But the analysis seems to come from a place of, what would it take for me to want to play there? Or the idea of like, I know what it would need. Do they have that? And the answer was pretty strongly, no, it's not there yet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are some issues. Like, they just don't have the cash on hand. Maybe it's unfair to say they don't have the cash on hand. I don't know what their bank accounts look like, but I just don't know right now if they're in an environment where they can spend the sort of create the sort of prize pools in super rare and especially unique. When we think about like the multiples in limited and even the multiples in rare for winning that first, second, third, those top 10 prizes. It's hard to do that on a week in, week out basis. And I know a lot of people feel like, no, it's not that hard. They make a lot of money, but there's plenty of reasons why they can't do that. So it's like, what else can they do? And I just always think about these VIP experiences and these things that feel like they're sort of dreams and things that are just would be so cool to experience. Like, I'm not a big AC Milan fan, but like, that's still a pretty crazy experience getting to be on the plane and then have VIP tickets. And it always felt a little silly to me that you just needed rare cards to compete in that. Rare cards feel pretty common. Limited cards feel pretty common. It's easy to just plan for 1 weekend and go and get those. But, at least in super rare and unique, like like it would create some sort of like, oh, I have these cards and I have these cards, not just because I can maybe win a star super rare or win a T3 or something, grow my gallery, but I can like win these once in a lifetime opportunities. Like I could play at Anfield. So, my hope is that Sorare could maybe create something around that to create a different incentive. I think there's a few ways they could go about doing that. I think if they did do that, they would need to be like, look, this is what we're doing for the year, instead of being like, oh, special weekly, you need super rares and uniques to do this, because people aren't going to want to buy super rares and uniques for one-off competitions. But if they know stuff is coming and there's a, it might be difficult to have a calendar, but it's just like, like every couple of weeks they're giving away some VIP thing, or they're giving away some sort of NFT or credit or whatever. We live in this crypto ecosystem, like that's what everything's behind. Like lean into that with what we can give to those users for placing high in those competitions that they can then redeem or use to bid on. I think there's a lot of opportunity there that should get explored. Maybe they need to build out that infrastructure.
Okay. I'm going to go over to your post here because I don't know if I'll go through the entire thing. And I say that just before I'm sure we will go through the entire thing. But you did compare kind of the scarcity, the cash that's being given out in each scarcity previously and the future. And we see kind of increases. And I think the general hope was that this is what we would see, more money this year. But it's actually this further piece that I wanted to touch on, because I was in a Discord and somebody was kind of asking about this, that the line right here, Sorare have decided to reduce the number of winning lineups by 37%. Can you kind of like explain like this chart and like what you mean by that?
So, what I mean by that is, we're looking, I just looked at the old competitions from like, I think back in like game week 371 or somewhere around there, when it was a full game week, when we had Europe, MLS, everything going on at once. And just the number of people that could win cards or cash directly. I'm not talking about boxes. That's sort of a variable number depending on entries, but truly the amount of winning slots. Like, oh, I have something to open in my rewards today because I got a card, I got cash. That's really exciting. That number it's dropped. They've decided to drop that number going into the future. And it looks like by about 37%. That doesn't inherently mean rewards are worse or less. You're getting less rewards. It's just when you finish in those slots now, you're getting on average a more valuable reward, at least for in season. It seems like they've kind of, on those curves on placement to cash, they've kind of just lifted the curve on the on the y-axis where the cash is kind of going up. So it's an interesting balance. I think it works well for limited and rare, because it sort of gets rid of that tail that felt really frustrating in like the Division 4 and Division 5, where you would also win $5, but you would need 30 less points. And that just didn't feel fair. But now in Division 1, because they've raised the amount of cash that you get, even though it's fewer slots, they can now like make it comparably worse in Division 4. Like it feels worse. Like, oh, I can win $10 at worst in Div 1, but I can only win like $5 in Div 4. And so now that churn, like I have to be very consistent in Div 4 or Div 5. And so it's like, that's really hard to do no matter what people want to say, because if you get promoted, if you do well, then you're in a higher division, you need to drop back down. So it's just kind of, let's just keep pushing up. And I think that's where, we need to be with the division system to make it feel more appropriate, since we're really leaning into it.
So Vita is here. Hello, Vita. Said, to be noted, we're missing in-season boxes, which also give credits and essence on top of all of this and aim to, quote, manage the tail, unquote. Overall, the EV in-season, especially in Division 1, has almost doubled. Now you really want to climb to Division 1.
Yeah.
Something you talked about, like you think that Division 1 should be the draw for everybody.
Yeah, and I was talking with Vita about this. It also allowed having boxes in Classic, but also in season. It just lets Sorare kind of fine tune things without having to change up how many people are winning. You can make Div 1 feel better by boosting the essence that you maybe get out of them, or whatever. Maybe the market credits are better, or whatever else it is. And that's a better way to kind of adjust things than cutting slots and adding it somewhere else, which feels like, oh, I went to Div 3 because it was better. Now I have to go back up. And that's really frustrating, to be like, I'm trying to play this game optimally, but then Sorare just are chopping and changing. But that's a better balance to me. So I do like that boxes are in season. I think I had always pushed for boxes being in season. I didn't want essence in season. That's a different conversation. But yeah,
I'm ready to have that conversation, because when essence was announced, and everybody remembers that you, Mike and I, MPen and I, were all very positive about essence and loved it from the very second they announced it. But you've had some concerns that they might give away too much.
Yes, and I don't qualify that concern. I'm not worried about it necessarily in a limited perspective. They don't give, like, we look at where the mints are in limited, at least historically. Who knows what they'll do next season?
Yeah,
there's a lot of room there for minting cards, and there's so many players. Like, I'm not worried from it there. I really get a little bit more worried when I think about unique, where there's only one card you can give away. Like, you can't, there's no one of two or two of twos in uniques. Like, that's not the point of uniques. So that balance is a little concerning. And then super rares, where it already feels really difficult to win rewards. And then now, like, some of that has to be reserved for reward boxes. And I think people are going to want to save up there to get T1s and stars, because those are just so much more impactful in the super rare division than maybe at rare or limited, because of the flexibility you have in rare and limited. But my qualification is, Sorare can fine-tune things, and I'm sure that they will fine-tune things. My concern is that I worry about how they set expectations for users with Essence. Everything's great right now. Everybody loves Essence. It's really fun, and it will be really fun. But it won't be fun when Sorare all of a sudden are like, we're giving out a little bit too much, we need to cut the essence, or we can't tie essence to the percentage of entries because we've got a lot more users. That's not going to feel fun as a user, especially if you like sold your buddies on, hey, come join this platform. Even if you just finish in the top 25 or 50%, you'll kind of earn these essence or shards, and you can make a card, sort of the quality you want. And then all of a sudden you can't because too many people joined. I think it's all about setting the right expectations. And maybe I'm just being overly cautionary. And maybe they'll do that when they announce what the boxes look like and what the essence is. But just based on the track record, I'm a little nervous about that, and just a little bit nervous from the community standpoint. Like, I want us to all keep enjoying the game, but I worry that this is the best it's going to be and not the worst it's going to be.
So is there any, like, do you feel more concerned because of the cards that we've seen crafted in the card factory over the summer, that it's kind of like, I feel like, and obviously we only see the good ones. People aren't like, not many people are going out being like, look at this terrible card that I got in the factory. But I feel like there's this, it's not even underlying admission that like the prize pools have been boosted over the summer with Euros and Copa, and that like surely it won't continue. But we all know when it doesn't continue as expected, people will be disappointed. And so does that play any part of it, or is it truly just the fact that it seems like they will be rewarding a lot of this, and that's where that's the easiest path to the best cards?
For this past summer, I'm not that worried about it, just because they have a lot of limited mints still to give, and a lot of the cards being crafted are limited cards, and they're going to go out of season in a few weeks' time. So I'm slightly surprised. I understood maybe before the start of the Euro, or no, but they didn't even have Essence at that point. I'm a little surprised by the amount of that people have been crafting. I think it's a new thing and people are excited to use it. But I would also not be surprised if there's a fair chunk of users that are holding on to that Essence until kind of the new cards drop into the factory. But my bigger concern truly is next season, because right now there's really not that much Essence that's been given out, and it's all of the Essence that's been given out for the most part is limited because Rivals boxes give limited Essence. Once we have a full season of European soccer where there's so many places to play, so many places to earn boxes and to get Essence, there's going to be a lot of people at the end of the summer or at the end of the European season who don't really play over the summer. They'll just be like, cool, I've got 480 Essence and 20 boxes stored up. I can't wait till the start of the next season. I'm gonna get a star card and maybe another tier 3. And that way I only have to buy 2 cards. And I think I worry from perspective that they'll be having to mint a lot at the start of the season, and they're going to be minting a lot of cards that they aren't selling. Like, that's when you want to earn your money. And I just don't think they'll see reduced revenue because of it. And I think that's a bad thing from a company that we want to stay around.
So it's not even a rebuttal, but I think you're giving Sorare managers either too much credit or expecting there to be too many sharp players who will figure that out. And maybe it's just the fact that like Essence is new and the prize pools were boosted, but it felt like there were plenty of opportunities for people to accumulate Essence all summer and use them tomorrow or, in a few weeks. And they didn't. And they were like, nope, let's craft right now. And obviously, like, the more that people talk about it, it gets out like that you should wait. But I do think that there is like an inherent YOLO attitude in Sorare that people will not enough people will save up for the top threshold milestones.
I agree and I disagree. I agree with you that that's probably true for limited and maybe even rare to some degree. But let's say you're a super rare or unique user. You've been playing super rare all season. You have 400 Essence and it's March or April and you don't play over the summer. Are you really going, like, I don't believe that super rare users for the most part are going to spend 400 Essence in April. Like, I think that's actually will be a smaller percentage of people, because if they're like, oh, I want to play in season, or oh, I can sell this card at the start of next in season, like that's going to be just worth way more money. And also in super rare, like for example, you only need 3 in-season cards compared to the 4. Like, you need less of them. So if you're able to craft 2 of them and you only need to buy 1, like I think there's like some inherent concerns in the higher scarcities for that. You're right. I think for limited and rare, it'll be so easy to get it. We'll be able to get plenty or feel like we're progressing plenty quickly. But I think at the super rare level, where it's just like, if you want to try to get a Lucho Acosta or a Messi, or, I mean, those are bad. They play over the summer. But let's say you want to try to get like an Mbappe super rare or a Vinny super rare or something. Would you rather have one in April, or would you rather try to get like the in-season one next? Like, and that's my concern.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. There are a couple of really good comments here. Philly Dilly said, if you wait to craft, you're taking on the additional risk that sort of change the craft rules, which is kind of the case for anything that we do. And Scosmo said, is there a consideration, though, that if you don't spend them at any point, Sorare could just pivot again and make them useless, which Alex was before this, it makes SoCoins great again. I mean, I guess anything you do, there's inherent rule change risk, right?
But if that's the risk, it would feel cool if just all of a sudden Sorare announces it and it's already changed right when the announcement goes live. Like, if they make that change and you're like, oh, these are getting worse, I'm just going to spend it. You can still spend it right now. It's not like it's something that's happening in the future. You can still craft in June if you need to, because they're upping the thresholds or whatever for a T1 or a star.
Yeah.
But I hear you. You don't know what can change.
Yeah. Vita said, I waited to spend my coins. Now I feel like it's too late to unlock a new training, yet it's literally the only thing I can do with it. I've got 200,000 shakes saying, yes, I feel the same way. Where was the other one? What do you think of this idea? Scosmo's actually talked about this a little bit to me and others. He said, I want us to remove all card rewards. And I actually don't even want to talk about that. But he said, and replace it with a fully transparent, not random essence reward system, where basically it's like, if you finish first, you win this much essence. And if you finish, and just go down the list instead of making it the RNG game. What do you think about specific essence for spots?
I think if you didn't have cards, you would need to do something like that, because it would feel cruel if you finished first and got a random amount. But I think like putting that to the side, if you win a card, I just think people I'm sorry, I like the dopamine effect of like opening the box and seeing how much essence I'm going to get. Like, I think about the in-season cash side of things. Don't get me wrong. It's really fun to win cash. Like, it's great because it's like, oh, I can just go buy something. But I'm not excited on rewards day. I'm like, oh, I'm going to press this card and it's going to have a $5 like symbol on it. Exciting. Like, I get more excited opening a tier 5 than I do winning $30 in cash on rewards day.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to lose that. I would want that to stay in. And if you get rid of essence from boxes, what's going to be in boxes? We haven't been able to find another suitable replacement yet, or a thing to put in. So it's just going to be level ups and a 0.25% chance at a jersey.
Right. Vita said, I mostly played in season 2024 and I did miss card openings, which like, yeah, the difference is the whole time, you know what you're going to win when you win cash. Like, once it's over, like, you know exactly what you're going to win. And I think that's also the reason why they don't publish exact prize distribution, like card distributions before the game week, because why do it if you can also provide this kind of like dopamine rush of what is this card that is going to spin around. Scosmo said the idea was specific to super rare and unique, which theoretically should be siphoned off from the rest of the game.
That's fair. I haven't thought about it I haven't really thought about that too much from this. It would be better in terms of being able to control. I'm just worried about the essence distribution in those two. But I think maybe my fear is just one of caution, and I should wait until I see the percentages before I start maybe blaring some alarms or whatever. Maybe I'm just too early to the party.
Out of curiosity, and this is actually a question kind of everybody in the live chat here too. I guess the first part is, do you ever look at prize pools? Like the for cards?
Like who's in it?
Yes.
No, not because I play limited and rare. So basically everybody's in it. Like, it's not that exciting. Like, I know Mbappe's in the champion pool. Like, it's, yeah. But so, I imagine at super rare and unique, that's different. I've heard Sean, I think, mention it. Is that something you do in super rare?
So I was actually, there was a second part to that question, which was actually my real question was do you look at how many cards are still left to be rewarded? Because they list that. I don't know if it's true. And I'm not like calling them liars. I just don't know if it's actually like accurately updated every week. But they also, I think, announced recently, and if anybody here knows I'm wrong, please tell me so. But I'm fairly certain that they have moved away from showing how many cards are left per competition, and now it's just the total number. So like they used to have, there are 4 Jude Bellinghams left in Champion Europe, but there are 6 in U23 or something like that. And now they'll show, what did I say, 4 and 6, 10. That seems like really, really important information for crafting cards. Like if you can get a star and you're like, all right, who's in the star pool? And they're like, we have 3 Judes left to be crafted. And we have 8 Yamin Lamals and Lamine Yamal. Is that what I said? and, whatever, I feel like you start to try to make somewhat educated guesses of when the optimal time to craft a card is if you wanted a specific one.
I think that, like, I'm always a fan of having more information, and the more information, the more informed decisions like we can make. And that's kind of always my goal with whatever the dashboards is or the articles is. It's just like, let's give more people more information. So, I mean, yes, I think that would help make some people do that. But I think there's also plenty of people who would just see, I can win an Mbappe. Who cares? Like, let's go for it.
Let's go.
Let's go all in. I'm going to win that Mbappe. Sorry, nobody else is.
And limited, plenty of people could.
Yeah.
I'm going back to the Medium post here with your comparison of in-season payouts for all the different divisions, or excuse me, all the different competitions: Champion, Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, Challenger, Contender. Did anything jump out at you on these?
Nothing too crazy besides the fact that I think the way they've tweaked in season to make Div 1 really feel like Div 1, and I would say even Div 2 feel like Div 2, and Div 3 feel better than Div 4. I think, at least from an outside perspective, we haven't seen scoring or any of those other things, but this feels like how it should have been last season. So I think that's a great I think that's a great thing. Like, I always wanted to be in Div 1 when doing Challenger in season, because I didn't want to miss out on that jackpot, hitting the first place, getting that big cash reward. But now I want to be in Div 1, not just because of that, but because, like, at the worst, I get $10 or whatever that minimum is. And that's just much better than Div 2 or Div 3 and Div 4. So I really like the balance more. Again, when I look at this, I feel for Unique. I feel for Super Rare. I just don't think those prize pools are good enough. And I think we'll see that reflected in the prices we see for the Super Rares and the Unique cards.
What was your opinion? And this came up on a Sorare Data show months ago with Nashi, that basically said his idea was each scarcity should have the same total prize pool. Meaning, if we look here, then we have limited champion, where I'll use the rare just because it's a more fun number. But like, there are $27,000 given out in rare champion division one, or all divisions. Make it 27,000 in limited, rare, super rare, and unique each. And therefore, like, you pay more in super rare to compete against fewer people, but you can still win the same amount. Like, is that a reasonable?
I think in a perfect world that works. It's a cool idea. And I think that's how it should be if we had enough users. I just don't think, like, it's not just sort of what you can win. It's not what you can win that always drives prices. I think it's a component of what drives prices, but you need to have the buyers in the market as well. And I'm not sure that there's enough super rare buyers. I'm not sure there's enough unique buyers, because we want to make those prize pools great, but at the same time, we don't want Sorare to lose money on those prize pools because there aren't enough buyers there. So it's just maybe there would be some sort of adjustment. Oh, people, look, the ROI is better in super rare, but there might just be a lot of people who can't cough up the amount of money you need. And it's just a barrier. Like, it's just the price becomes a barrier. And so you don't have enough buyers. So I like it.
Cosmo goes the other way, that there are no buyers because the rewards aren't any good.
And that's what's really different. I mean, that's a chicken or the, like, it's the chicken or the egg, like, what comes first? And that's really difficult. I think Sorare haven't done themselves any favors by super rare continuing to not give love, because I think people always had hope. And I think there's a lot of people starting to lose that hope in super rare and lose that hope in unique.
I don't know which one is the chicken or the egg, but I'll say that it seems Sorare have clearly made the choice that they will not increase prize pools considerably with the hopes that people will buy cards for it.
Yeah, and this will come up the one thing I'll say with this is I think that from my understanding, there are regulations in place where they also just can't put up big cash pools and necessarily just hope the money floods in. Like, I think that's a really tricky place to be in because they're in a pretty new, they're a pretty new type of company. Like,
Sure.
they're not considered a gambling company, but there are definitely some things. This feels like fantasy sports to me, and that's very gambling-esque. I don't know what the right terminology is. So I think that there's also some regulations where they just can't overshoot wildly on the prize pools and hope the money comes pouring in.
Which is a very different situation to a company like DraftKings here in the US with like either their daily fantasy sports or their sports betting. Like, they can easily lose lots and lots and lots of money in order to the hopes of bringing in customers in. And Sorare are just in a different spot because of that. Yeah. Mulkey has an interesting question here. What competitions do you think are 100% worth avoiding? Of course, with the caveat of playing what you like. Seems like Super and Unique's on that list, but is there any within Rare and Limited that you think are
so I think Challenger and Contender, I think they're just going to be much harder competitions I think they're just going to be much harder. There's so many leagues are now grouped in it. It's hard to keep track with the number of licensed clubs because I know some of that's been dropping lately. So I said 386 or 368 in the article. That's at least what was on the website when I wrote on it, but
that's what it was on. That's what the website says today.
Okay. So if about 80-ish, 85-ish are champion and you have not 4 places, a card can be used in 2 places for most of the champion, but you're only competing with like 1 league basically versus Contender and Challenger. I just think those cards are either going to have to be a lot less expensive or champion be a lot more expensive, whichever way you want to think about it. Or you're just going to have to I'm just scared to touch it a little bit. I think Challenger in season is fine over the summer just because it's just the MLS and just the Brazilian League, and the Brazilian League doesn't even have in-season cards. Right. So, and maybe that's something they'll fix in the next year. And I would say even then, I think the game's a lot easier when there's less variability. Like, there's less people who can randomly smash in the MLS or in Challenger right now because it's just the MLS. That's not going to be true in 3 months. Like, you could just have so many more teams pop off and so many teams have good matchups. And that's just not the case for the Premier League side or the Bundesliga side. There might be 3 teams that have really great matchups and maybe 1 random team. That's just way different. So
yeah,
a lot of it depends on what the price points look like. I think it's hard to say for sure until we know that and we know how many cards Sorare are pumping out at the start of the season.
So Nicola just tweeted this out. It's Wednesday's date in an American format, no less, which is kind of nice. Do you think this is when we find out how many cards are going to be pumped out?
Is that when Contender starts their cards on sale?
I thought it was tomorrow, wasn't it? Maybe
it could be. I mean, I'm not planning to buy any of them, so.
Let's see. One day AT, I guess. It is Wednesday. Excuse me. Yes.
I mean, I assume there's got to be something more than just that because we already know that. I don't feel like that's.
Andy loves his lion, his lion emoji. Anyway. Yeah, and so people are asking in Classic. Vija says, but if you've been playing Sorare for 2 to 3 years, Challenger in season and even Contender in season is very fine. Classic is another story.
Classic, I think what was really interesting when I was doing the comparisons is that Premier League prize pool in Classic getting a cut. And it felt like it got readjusted. And I was like double checking and triple checking. And And I'm like 99.9% sure that's accurate because I've checked a bunch of times, but I still it doesn't feel right. Like I still can't believe it because last season was one of those weird situations where the Prem Classic was basically as good as in season because there's only more or less half a season worth of classic cards because they had just gotten the Premier League license.
Right.
And all of everything that was getting pumped out last season was in season cards. And so it was this really, really sweet spot to be in where you could own any type of Premier League card. And it was a great situation. But now we have basically a huge influx of Premier League cards because Sorare have like pumped those a lot because they started earlier with in season in the Prem over the Christmas holiday period. And then they cut the rewards pool. I was just really surprised by that. I was also surprised because, they're giving more essence out. I think they're giving more essence out, but they didn't really cut card rewards that much, which doesn't help my feelings towards it. Except they cut it in unique, which they had to with the essence, but
right. But the runway of cards in limited is much longer. Like not changing the number of cards rewarded while also doing essence is theoretically fine in limited. Like it's not like they're running out of cards. But Rare currently feels like they're running out and we haven't had any essence yet.
What are they at with the mints for rare MLS cards? They were crazy. I remember at the start of the season before, MLS had that special weekly for 3 weeks with those special prize pools. And I was shocked that they were at like 15 rare cards before that even started.
Messi's at 82.
That's insane. Well, yeah. Like,
I don't even know
you're not crafting an in-season Messi. Like, you're not going to craft that with your essence anymore, it feels like. Lucho's at 80, basically. Yeah. How is that possible?
89 we've got, of which 22 were rewards excluding boxes.
So so they've definitely changed so they've changed the percentage that are getting rewarded out then. Because if there's 18 rewards in theory left, that puts them over the 100. So they've dropped that percentage down. That's really interesting. It's still 40%, 22, but when they still have 18 left, Vitaly, and there's not 18 cards left to give out.
Yeah, I think, hold on, because...
Oh, okay.
What is this, 22? I think, but this is 22 that have been rewarded and not sold, right, Vita? I think if they're traded, they don't show up as rewards anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's why. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But 89 on July 15th is nuts.
There's still a lot of the season left. I feel like we're like 23 game weeks in, and maybe there's only like...
It's like 10. Some teams have like 10 games left.
But there's still Leagues Cup and the playoffs, which the playoffs are longer now because it's like that that best of 3 format. Like there's a lot of playoff games too. That like they're going to be out of cards before July's over. It feels like
And he's probably on the higher end because he's U23 also, so they've been rewarding him elsewhere.
I wonder if these rewards are just getting pumped out really quickly with that new policy of only rewarding cards that are playing, and there's now only MLS cards, and so they have to give out a lot more.
That I feel like that was an idea that the community came up with no thought of like, does it actually work? Like it totally feels like one of those. And they were like, yeah, let's do that. And now they're realizing why it was a bad idea.
Yeah, Nanza's right. I mean, it's definitely okay. That it's just one of those things that feels a little crazy that we're at this point because we've never been at this point before.
I mean, it just takes a September MLS midweek where everyone plays, so Challenger is open, and you run out of rewards.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mike said, to be honest, when you hit MLS playoffs, you don't really want to win MLS cards. Well, that's certainly true. Yeah.
No, that's totally fair. I think it's just something we're not used to seeing.
Right. We're not used to seeing cards get to 100. And now that we're getting close, everyone's like, oh, please don't run out.
I think it kind of speaks more to what Classic is going to look like in the future, because Sorare now have the ability to sell a lot of in-season cards, which they haven't really had that prior to this new format. So Classic is just going to get dumped on every single season. I feel like it's going to be close to full mints for a lot of scarcities. And even in limited, that's going to feel really scary. Just because it's going to be it's already a lot, but imagine if we get to 900 cards for them, and just all of a sudden, like some players' cards just double in supply in Classic. It just feels, and it's not surprising. I mean, but it just feels like you're going to need to focus on making sure you have star cards when you play Classic in the future. Like, there's really no more of this T3, T4, and it's something we were always headed towards, but it's just something you need to be aware of.
The distribution on limited cards is so much slower, though, like as a percentage of the total mints. Like we were saying, Schulte's at 89 rares, and he's at 283 limiteds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so it's starting to feel, as we started the show saying, like, limited and rare are very different than super rare and unique. And then I was like, well, unique is pretty different than super rare. And now it feels like limited is very different from rare. Like, as much as we want to, the whole like progressing from one scarcity to the next, they're really starting to feel like very different games, like 4 different games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Vita said by the time Lamine Yamal is out of U23, he'll have 6,000 cards in limited. Is it 2032?
Gosh,
I think that's what it was. 2032.
That's insane. I don't feel comfortable knowing that.
Johansen says, do we think tiers 3 and 5 will just be completely useless?
Yeah, but that's okay. Like, I'm of the opinion that tier 3s, tier 4s, tier 5s, they don't need to be worth something.
Agreed.
That's harsh to say. I think they'll have their place in season comps because there's less cards there. And that's great. Like, you can win a Classic season card, or you can in Classic win a tier 3 or a tier 4, and it'll have some value, and you can get rid of it if you want. And I think that's a good balance. I don't think it's going to be a playable card in Classic, but it's a playable card in season. So I've done a lot of the talking on like the numbers and all that. How are you feeling with everything? Has anything changed for you yet, or are you just wait and see until what the prices look like?
I had almost no intention of playing in season, full stop. But what I have picked up is, and most of it is early season prices, I think, are going to be so absorbent that it's just not, like, I don't think it'll be worth it. I think a lot of the people who will be buying those cards are going to end up furious that they own them and giving up too quickly. And what I tend to wait on things like that. So I'm not saying I won't play. Like, I've made like summer contender in season lineups. And I think as much as like contender is starting to look impossible, the more I play contender classic, everything looks easy, like in terms of like being able to win. But I just think it'll take me a while to play in season. And I think that there are a lot of people I think there are enough people who will just blast away as soon as they're out, and the prices will be really high. And then we're going to see it again at this international break that everybody's like, I'm going to wait till then. Prices will settle. But I think there are too many people who are going to do that also. And so now you're like, all right, do you wait until November, December? And then now you have the whole, can I recoup all of this back in 4 months instead of 8 months? And I think the more that I look at what I've done before this, the more you kind of realize that all of this could be seen. Like, you knew that like Contenders would be the hardest in terms of the number of cards and the fact that it was the lowest priority for Sorare. So it's like you have the most cards competing for the littlest amount of money. And I think the total, like I'm going to end up just playing for Essence. Like, I think that's what it's going to come down to, which is a very, very, very different mindset that I've had for the 3 years that I've been on Sorare. And yeah, I think we're going to get to the point where, like, realistically, because I don't go into every competition being like, I'm winning this one. I try to be as like realistic as possible. And so I think like rewards for me will be either scraping in season or Essence, and just kind of like waiting until I have enough to get a card I hopefully like.
That's fair. That's fair.
You were playing in season. Like, are you going to stop playing in season in 2 weeks when the European leagues come back?
So I'm not, I'm a little bit on the fence because I did in-season MLS. I was like, I'm just going to get right into it. I think this is going to be a great place to be. And
right.
Maybe
you won. So you were.
I was pretty fortunate. Like I've done very well in the limited in-season there. And it makes me want to do in-season for those Prem comps. I think the prices are going to be astronomical. So I'm a little hesitant that way in that regard. But what is also appealing is the fact that so many people get Essence now, or should get some amount of Essence playing in season just by finishing in the top 50%. Like, finishing in the top 50% is not that crazy. It's really not. Especially if all 5 of your players start, because DMPs hit a bunch of lineups. That's valuable. Like right now, we just don't quite know how to value that. It's a little hard. And so we're just all looking at the cash to number of people. But if you can also craft these cards that are, at least at the start, very valuable, like it's really intriguing. I think it's not that I'm going to be priced out. I'm just going to feel like I just think it's too much of a leap to go in that hard that early.
Yeah,
but maybe the prices won't be that crazy.
Maybe. Vita said, what I'm very curious about is how in-season prices evolve in the coming 3 months. I'm ready to bet people will be very surprised by the shape of the curves, which I'm curious why you think we'll be surprised. Because I think what I think is going to be one of the outcomes is, I think the multiple that you have to pay for similar players in the Prem versus Bundesliga and La Liga will be greater than the amount that you can win. So I think like you'll be able to win with cheaper teams in Bundesliga and La Liga and win more than in the Prem, even though like the prize pools are smaller. But it's just very clear that the focus and the marketing efforts and just the popularity of the Premier League will make those cards really attractive to people, because it's like, that's my team, or that's the league I follow. And I don't think we're going to see similar pushes in La Liga and Bundesliga. I'm not going to say they're cheap, but I think it's that, like, yeah, I think your ROI perspective is better, or will be better, in Bundesliga and La Liga, only because it's not the Prem.
Yeah, I think I'm really still interested to see what they do with special weeklies and stuff. Like I'm curious, especially now that the Champions League, for example, is, and I assume the Europa League, they're all like league formats now. They're not groups or anything.
Yeah. So we think. Vita said the reason why is that people are bad at math It's not going to be a quick drop in prices going down by half in a month like some people expect. Everybody wants to buy at half price, and it's not going to be linear. And I think this is right too, Vita. People haven't yet priced Bundesliga and La Liga accordingly. Like I think those will be much cheaper than the Prem. Again, I don't think that they're going to be cheap, but I think there's just many more people who are interested in the Prem. And because of that, they will put their money there. Well done, Agent Cooper here.
That's good. I just wonder, I'll be curious to see what the price premium is going to be on the cards. Like I think it really helps that you can use a classic season card. It helps anchor the prices a little bit more, because I think people would go, imagine if you needed 5 in-season limited cards for the Prem. Like the prices would be astronomical for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not to give Sorare any ideas, but
I mean, surely they've considered it.
Yeah. I was a little surprised that they didn't do something along the lines, at least for limited and rare. You can start with 4 at the start of the season, and then after 3 months, it's going to turn to 5, or 2 months, kind of like how the MLB does it a little.
MLB did that, yeah.
But I'm all for more user-friendly things.
Yeah, so MLB, for those of you who don't know, eased them in over, I think it was 10 game weeks, that at first you needed to have 5 of 7. So MLB lineups are 7. And now you need, actually, I think you can still use a classic. Maybe it was 4 to 6. They moved it. But it was kind of this like rolling, well, not rolling, but you had 10 game weeks to basically get your shit together. And I think it seemed to work for the most part. Like nobody was like shocked that it was happening. It didn't force them to like blast cards out as much as they're going to have to starting on Wednesday. I realize we've already gone through an hour here and I have like 1,000 more questions, but from your perspective, and you, I think, have a much more economic viewpoint of Sorare than most people. What do you think the auction to instant buy plan is for these new cards?
Like when you say that, do you mean like at the start of the season? Like are they just gonna pump out? I'm not.
So Wednesday we get contender cards. How many auctions before we see an instant buy?
Oh, I think we'll see an instant buy right off the bat, because generally, like, your first cards are the most expensive cards. So it's only going to be like, if someone instant buys at I don't know what the percentage is. Let's say it's 15% premium to what the first card sold for, which should be like the highest price in theory. Like great for Sorare, like wonderful.
Sure.
Like that's not a bad thing. At worst, like it gets adjusted as new auctions come down. I know that there's I see frequently complaints on Twitter that this instant buy is wrong, or like that was. But if it's always like, let's say 20% higher than the most recent auction, like I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they should just be out. I think cards should be available for people that want to spend a premium on instant buy, or that want to spend a premium on buying it now. I just don't think that's a bad thing. So I hope they have that. I would say just have plenty. I guess how much of the supply is a different thing.
The instant buy is just super interesting to me because I think I mentioned this before, but like if you buy a card on instant buy and there is another one available for instant buy after that, it is always higher. Mm-hmm. And so if you are, like Vita said right here, if you see a Rodri at $1,500, do you instant buy it? Rodri's sold today for $1,089. And this was 86 of 100 for him. 1,500 seems like cheap if you could instant buy that card right away, knowing that if they have an instant buy after that, it's 1,700.
Well, I think I've noticed this when I've like bid on MLS cards at the start of the season, where my next bid would be where the instant buy would be. And so I just instant bought instead of bidding it up, because I knew that there would be 2 or 3 buyers, and this auction could get pushed up, and then someone else is going to be like, the auction's the same price as the instant buy. Like, I'm just going to take the instant buy off the market. And then that pushes up the auction price even more. And so it's a balancing act. What'd you say? Sorry.
And it pushes up the next instant buy.
Yeah, and it pushes it up. I do like their balance of having only 2 kind of in the stack for the instant buys, where, you know, there's like a cool down period. I think that helps balance it. And I think that's probably the proper way to do it. So you always have an auction to be price controlling. And if I'll say how I would do it, and I think it's very close to how they do it. An auction kind of sets the baseline price. You can buy 20% higher. There's a stack of 2. If neither of them have sold, then at the next auction, it gets adjusted to be whatever 20% of the price of that auction is. If both cards have sold, there would be some cool down period before the next ones pop up on the market, just to sort of control the supply. And that would be different depending on the scarcity.
I was going to call it biggest fear, but I don't really care that much. But my biggest fear is either the traders, some bot, Pranksy, just clicks instant buy as fast as they can on every single instant buy that's available. And we're just stuck with a certain number of counts with a ton of cards that people want. And now they set the market.
Yeah, but I think then in Sorare's algorithm, they should recognize people are trying to buy this card and can't, especially at limited and rare, and just be like, we will sell more cards then. Like they can, there's a balance. They can control that price so that people can get their hands on cards. I also don't think it's a bad thing if like Botzer and Pranksy are buying up the cards in limited and rare. That's great that they're paying a premium for something that it's hard for them to get an ROI on, because they'll have maybe too many. Like you can't have more than 3 you can't play more than 3 Rodris in the Prem competition.
You can play 6.
Oh, you're right. You could play in the Classic, but why would you pay a price premium on it? Like you would be paying so much more. And I think that's better for Sorare's pockets. And then hopefully if people are doing that, they could adjust the prize pools or make them bigger or better. Like I don't think Sorare making more money is a bad thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
They're a business. Like, yes, I want to do as well as possible and win as much cash as possible. But if Sorare is making money, that's also great news, because I get to play this game that I really love playing, and it's a lot of fun. Like, that's awesome. It's like saying in like those mobile free-to-play games, oh man, I wish that like there weren't whales so that I would have to pay for this game or whatever. It's like there's some sort of like, it's good to have these guys, and it's good to have people that are willing to pay exorbitant amounts. If there's a lot of people that want to do that, I think that's good.
So I'll let you go with one last question here. Do you think that's Sorare, or I guess what percentage of the cards that they can sell do you think that they would be comfortable selling right away? Or if we see like this absurd run up, you know, people just buying cards, and Sorare's reaction is like, oh, people really want these whatever player cards, we'll just keep putting them out. Do you think that they sell all of their allotment quickly?
I think,
like, should they hold any cards for buying, you know, selling them later in the season? Like, there's nothing that says we're going to sell all of the Rodris within a month. But for other players that, you know, the tier 3s and tier 5s, like we'll just sell those throughout the year. But for like this elite cards, should they, or do you think they will sell all of them as fast as they can?
That becomes like a really interesting economic conversation, because we've never quite seen that happen before. It's this balancing act of, if you're Sorare, you want to maximize profits. Like at the start of the season, that's when the cards in theory have the most value. So you want to make sure you want to sell for as much as you can. So if you can sell everything for the highest premium at the start of the season, that's great. Those cards still exist on the secondary market, so people can just buy off of other players. But I would say that there would be some relevancy to just controlling this, having a little bit of control of the auction supply. So it feels like you wouldn't have this monopoly price market where everybody is price fixing at such a high price that you can't get these players.
Right.
I think Lister Play already does that anyways, but I don't think I think it just depends. I think Sorare probably has data, or I hope has information. They probably know what people's balances look like, spending behaviors, all of that stuff. And just there should be some analysis on the back end on kind of what's the right balance. But I think people spend more for more utility.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when people would give them a hard time for selling like the unique of a player who just came off like a huge game. And it's like the attention on a player like that is at its max after a huge game. The Julian Alvarez one always got me. Like he scores 6 goals and like 12 hours later, his unique hits the auction. And it's like, yeah, people want that card now. And never before, at least for a European season, has there been such an incentive to buy cards right away than it is now, because there are special competitions just for in-season cards that, yeah, I think in their mind, they would sell as many as they could as fast as possible, because like this is when people want them.
I think that the conversation gets really interesting for super rares. Like, how would you balance selling super rares? Because you can only sell, let's say it's 40%. Who knows? Who knows if that's changed? I don't know. But let's say they can only sell the 6 super rare cards. Would you sell those as early as possible? I think maybe. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it would become a balance of, are they worth a lot right now? Like, where would we put them in the star pool, or in the prize pool? And like, we will pump out good cards. And that way, if in super rare, someone starts popping off halfway through the season who nobody's heard of, like, they'll have the mints to sell at a higher price. Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of a balance of doing those two things and not just selling 6 or, all 6 backup goalkeepers when they could have become the starting goalkeeper 3 months down the line. And I think there's a lot that goes into that as well. Like, I think that's why we see lower mint counts probably for like Schulte's backup than we do. Yeah. So I think that's the balance. I think it's like I would sell as many cards for like of players that people want, and maybe restrict the supply of like maybe your bench players or kind of more role players, and see if those expand over time, or their roles expand over time.
Totally agree. Vita said something that's probably not quite obvious from a user perspective, but when you sell a Rodri card, a percentage of the money goes indirectly to Man City. When they sell a pre-order, it won't. So they'll wait to confirm that they get the assets, and in case he's transferred to, say, Real Madrid, then the money would go to Real Madrid, since the card is a Real Madrid card and not a Man City card. I don't think it matters from a Sorare perspective, though. Theoretically, they're paying somebody else. Not, who the money goes to probably doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, unless I wonder if the percentages are different by league. That would be the only thing, but yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Hence the legal points that they can't sell them all on day one. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have anything else? I apologize. It went longer than I expected. That's just what happens when I talk to you.
Oh, I would say the one other thing that I think that's interesting with the competition structure is, I think that sneakily Serie A and those French league players will be pretty good. I think a lot of people are going to play Bundesliga cards in Bundesliga, and like, I think that people should not feel frustrated that there are not specific leagues for France and Serie A, because that champion pool is great. And there shouldn't be too many cards from the Bundesliga or the Premier League over there, generally speaking, at least not in the start of the season, I would say. So I think there's probably a lot of value there that could be interesting.
Yeah, there does seem to be a bit of a decrease in those cards value-wise versus the other ones, because theoretically the utility is different. And that actually does remind me, 12 Rodris you can have.
That's right.
Yeah. That's what we'll go out.
I would say that there are probably, like, Rodri is really impactful, but let's say like someone else who's, I'll say Anthony Gordon, because he's like a fine forward in the Prem, at least based on his AAs and all that stuff. He's probably less usable in Champion, though, because there are really good options elsewhere that are probably a much cheaper price point than Anthony Gordon. So yes, in theory, you could go spend a lot of money on an Anthony Gordon and plop him in Champion, but you could find better value, I think, elsewhere. And it'll feel fun because it's all the leagues you know and love, without it being like, oh, I need to spend so much money on this forward so I can have a lineup, or this goalkeeper so I can have a lineup.
I wonder if it'll start to feel a little global all-star-ish. Obviously it's not global, but like, yeah, you want players from Spain and France and Italy, go nuts. Just do it. Go. Yeah, it's a good point. That's a really good point. Really good. Anyway, Peter, thank you very much for coming on. I think we all get smarter when we read and hear from you. So it's greatly appreciated, especially that you turn that around so quickly. That's a ton of work. And that doesn't even include the manual inputting of all of the numbers from a PDF graphic. So thank you for that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you could please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Shout out to Quinny. And yeah, we've got 2 days, if you're watching this on Monday when we're streaming it, until the new cards come out, and we get some answers about whether things are just going to be given away, instant buy, auction, however we're going to do it. But yeah, Peter, thank you very much, and I'll see you around.
Great. Thanks for having me.